We're going to get started. And again, for kind of housekeeping purposes, we will keep the water and tea service going in the Klamath room and the coffee service going here. If you need to take a break, you know where the restrooms are on this floor and the first floor. We have a great session set up for you. This is stormwater planning and management in various regions. We have 5 speakers. We're going to try to do the same thing where they do their presentations, maybe take 1 or 2 questions and move along. And then at the end, if there's questions for the whole panel, we will be doing that. And we're going to kick it off. Their full bios are in the program, but we have Colleen Foster with the City of Oceanside, Clara Napawan with UC Davis, Beth Payne with the State Water Resources Control Board, Jing Wu from SFEI, and Eric Porce from Office of Water Programs to round it out. So we'll get started with Colleen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you for coming back after lunch. So my presentation is very different than what we've seen today. And actually, as you know, you've got my bio and the guide, but really what explains my history and what I want to talk about today is I actually don't come from the water world or the stormwater world. I actually come from what formerly called the trash world. So what now we call implementation of zero waste. So yes, I enjoy talking trash, but what I'm going to be talking about is breaking down the silos and the importance of integrating all of our environmental compliance programs, all of our outreach initiatives together. So if you've got programs for clean water, you've got programs for water use efficiency, you have programs for zero waste or sustainability or climate action, if all of those programs, initiatives, and staff are not working together, you basically start to fumble and you don't see the success that you could see. And so today I'm going to be providing an overview of some of the things that my community has done. I work for the City of Oceanside. I've been with the city for the past 10 years. I started in the city in the Public Works Department, again, just managing the city's solid waste and recycling program. And about 5 years ago, I transferred over to the Water Department. So now I talk everything in relationship to environmental conservation, including water and stormwater. So is this the clicker? Great. So again, a bit of the background. Solid waste and recycling, I think it's sometimes the stepchild of what agencies have to deal with. It tends historically to have some of the lighter regulations. It's been many years since we've had significant enforcement sticks, very different than the enforcement sticks you'll see in stormwater programs with the MPDS permit. So, you know, several years ago, what ended up happening as the solid waste and recycling program, as state recycling mandates became stricter and more significant, in addition to everything happening for our clean water program, as well as our water use efficiency program, we started to have separate programs that were sending out separate people to the community to deal with our generators or our businesses and our residences. And our messages weren't even lining up. So it was there was a lot of issues, a lot of breakdown. And, you know, about 5 years ago when I did integrate into the water department, one of the reasons why I integrated into the water department is the solid waste and recycling industry. We tend to have financial resources that are very different than what you may or may not have in the stormwater aspects. So, you know, we're relative to solid waste and recycling. Not only are we managing resources, providing education, and implementing programs to reduce waste, you know, we're also working to provide services to our community to manage those resources. So we definitely had different funding opportunities, but we didn't have the regulatory stick. And so when I first entered into the water department, I had a very small team. It was hard to get the time of day, especially in face. Yeah, I'll be honest, especially in face of, you know, regulatory requirements in regards to water quality, clean water, and stormwater. So if I was going to be talking with our director or our city about, you know, we need to do inspections, we need to take enforcement action, we need to be progressive about certain things, it was really hard to get a year to listen. And instead, we really had a stormwater program that was getting pressured by the regulations, by different things happening, and pressure with the fact of having less resources and not really an ability to charge for the regulatory compliance aspects that they needed to do. And so it was kind of a great marriage of environmental programs. And so at that time, my program integrated with our clean water program and then also our water use efficiency program. And actually, as you'll see along with the presentation, the planning department, they're developing a climate action plan for our city now, and they don't really have an implementation arm or staffing. So now our environmental programs within our water department is going to most likely become the arm of implementation for climate action and energy conservation. So it's been an exciting shift. It took a lot of work. Definitely some commentary. If you asked me about 5 years ago what I think about stormwater people, I think you're definitely bullheaded. It's supposed to make you laugh, okay? You think you're the most important regulator in the room, most important inspector in the room, but you have a lot on your shoulders. And so did I quickly learn what you had on your shoulders, and my team and I were able to find ways to provide assistance to that. So I'm going to actually zone in on our compliance inspection program that we developed out of these issues. So began the development of a progressive utility. Our water department integrated all of our environmental compliance programs and created efficiencies for education and outreach, created efficiencies for our billing systems, our rate setting, our infrastructure, environmental compliance, and efficiencies for sustainability. And I'm going to talk about this last item. Our stormwater inspectors back in the day, when they'd have to go inspect MPDS generators or permittees, they had to inspect industrial, commercial, restaurants. Our industrial, commercial, and Oceanside, the list ranges around 1,500 to 2,000. And our restaurants in Oceanside ranges around 350 to 400, depending on the year. And so about 5 years ago, if you would talk to one of our clean water inspectors, an inspection process would take, in general, an hour to an hour and a half in time. By creating a unified and efficient system through our environmental programs and through the technology that we've developed over the years, we've taken that inspection time down to 30 minutes. So again, to decrease the burden on any individual program and to provide responsibility across the board for all of our environmental initiatives and all of our staff, and to get out of those silos. So progressive utility equals progressive service. So there's a lot of drivers to why we need to provide education, outreach, we need to provide compliance, and we need to work with our community. And those drivers, obviously the big ones are the regulations. And again, you've got some regulations with teeth and with less teeth. And what's interesting, if you're not already aware, regulations with teeth from the clean water aspect, but obviously drought, water use efficiency. I come out of Southern California, believe it or not. We're trying to do a lot to minimize the amount of water that we were using. We were put under significant pressure to meet the mandates over the past several years. And those sections in particular were the least funded and least staffed. So by integrating, we were able to support some of the water use efficiency education that we needed to do over the past several years and moving forward. For the solid waste and recycling sector, about 25 years ago, we had AB 939, which drove the diversion of basic recyclables. So that kind of drove, you start to see a landfill can, and then you see a recycling can. Since then, we've definitely had some regulations, but nothing with teeth. But what's come down the line recently in relationship to the state's climate action goals, greenhouse gas emission goals, and also goals relative to short-lived climate pollutants, the state is basically mandating the diversion of food, of organic materials. And what's interesting about this new regulation is for the first time, the solid waste and recycling programs and agencies and cities actually have to have an enforceable program. For the first time, by the year 2022, we'll actually be required to do the level of inspections that clean water professionals have been doing over the past several years. And it's a pretty significant compliance stick with SB 1383. In 2022, if businesses are not recycling their food waste, if organics are not meeting the diversion goals of the state and the city, we could be facing up to $10,000 a day fines for both the cities and the generators. So all of a sudden, over the past several years, solid waste and recycling became a forefront for my agency and is a forefront for many agencies around. So there's definitely a regulatory driver to combine these programs. And then there's opportunity for education and outreach. What was really frustrating is when I would get together with my friends from the clean water sector, or I get together with some other people from planning, etc., and I find out that they did some really great workshops that talked about watersheds or clean water, that talked about greenhouse gas emissions or climate action. And they had this group of people in this audience, but they didn't really connect the dots. So we talk about the need to keep our waterways clean. We talk about pollutants. We talk about different aspects. And we might even mention adding soil amendments, compost, mulch. Well, that's a great opportunity to talk about what creates compost mulch. How can we do better with our resources? It's a great opportunity to talk about zero waste. When I've got a clean water inspector going out to do a fog inspection at a restaurant, and they're looking at BMPs in the trash enclosure area, and they're also working inside a kitchen and looking at BMPs within a kitchen, that's a great opportunity for that inspector to educate that business about what's coming down the line in regards to recycling, regards to food waste. It's a great opportunity to educate that business about the different service opportunities with their trash enclosure, etc. So there's all these things, that great opportunities, but we weren't really working together. And so it provides a lot of opportunity for education outreach, and then it provides opportunity for programs that need to show monitoring compliance. So maybe they don't necessarily have the enforcement stick, but they need to show monitoring compliance. And it also could lead to support for additional ordinances, and I'll explain that shortly. So we developed the Unified Environmental Inspection Program. Again, when I met with my colleagues, especially in the Clean Water Program, about 5 years ago, I said, hey, let's combine all our inspections. Let's have one person do it or one team of individuals do it. They said it was impossible. So since that time, we've developed a system in which, yes, one environmental inspector goes out. And our first phase was the restaurant inspections, which is 370 inspections a year. And so they go out and they're not just asking questions about fog, they're asking questions about all the different environmental initiatives and regulations. And what we did also to make it more efficient is we actually, made it mobile. We brought technology in. We still have a lot of inspectors that are going out there working with paper, that are going out there working with carbon paper. So how can we really make it efficient? It's true. I just went to a fog conference, PS3 conference, and they were talking about the carbon inspection. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And then also our phase 2 is industrial and commercial inspections, which we're developing now. So we had a work order system called Lucity. We definitely had a lot of challenges with this system. This system was generally just used for work orders. So if someone called in, there was graffiti or there was a pothole, that would go into the system and would generate a work order. So my team, we looked into the system because, again, our inspectors were taking a piece of paper out, 12 pieces of paper. They were writing down the answers to the questions, and then they were coming back, and they'd have to take compliance in action against the business potentially or send a letter, etc. And they didn't really have a lot of easy ways to do it and to track it. So we worked with our Lucity system. We expanded its capabilities. It allows us to do all of our environmental inspections on a tablet or mobile devices, so all of our inspectors have iPads. It has a great, very simple dashboard, allows us to easily populate data. So I actually have some printout copies, sorry, but I did print out some copies of the list of questions we add in an inspection. And what's kind of neat about it is the water use efficiency people, they just want certain information from the full inspection, and they can query that data based upon what they need. From a solid waste and recycling perspective, I can query just the questions that I need and the information that I need. And so this system in general, and these again are just screenshots of it, examples of it, and again I can share the questions, and then if you want my information, we can also share the system. The GIS person, the tech person I dealt with Lucity, about 3 years said this was impossible. So today, the impossible is possible, and all of our restaurants are now inspected through this system. And so also we had to develop, how do you do a unified environmental inspection? I got the groups together. We got everyone to agree we're going to do this. But the fog inspector said, okay, you got to go all through fog questions first. You know, the solid waste people, then we got to walk back through the same kitchen, the same front area, and do the solid waste inspection. And then, oh yeah, for water, we got to walk through again. That didn't make any sense. So we developed a system to have a progressive inspection throughout the restaurant. So when you're in the front house of the restaurant, you're asking all the questions relative to the front house, no matter whether it's fog, solid waste, climate action, water use efficiency, and even eventually we developed our Green Ocean Site Certification program into the system. It allows you to identify problem areas. So if an inspector sees a non-compliance issue or a concern, they take a photo immediately, upload it into the system, and that's automatically generated when you have to do a notice or an education letter. That photo can get attached to that letter. So it was great for documentation. Again, the inspector that I started with, sweetest man, he had been a fog inspector for about 35 years, and he even learned how to use the system, and he fell in love with it. So we were able to get rid of all the filing cabinets, etc. So the other aspect of this system is we have a Green Oceanside Business Certification program that certifies businesses for being more sustainable. It's a point-based program. So now when you go through the inspection, the questions are set up in such a way that if they get so many points, they automatically get generated and certified for the Green Business Program. So instead of it being that really negative, I'm come here to inspect you experience, it's becoming an experience of education. It's also becoming an experience where the business gets to walk away potentially with a certification, which provides extra marketing support as well as technical support. So again, these are a couple screenshots. I'm talking really fast because we're short on time. And again, this is just the beginning. So our new organics bills is driving the need to not only recycle food waste, but to develop opportunities for food donation. So we're adding questions as we go along. And now the guy that used to just do fog inspection years ago is sitting there talking to the business and talking about their waste stream, seeing if there's any opportunity for food donation. He can then mark it onto the inspection system, and then I can automatically generate that for our food donors or our feeding agencies, and I can make a connection there in real time. So we're going to expand it to our industrial inspections. We're enhancing the questions. All of the questions are actually yes/no questions now. That's really important. If you look at a lot of the environmental compliance inspection programs, it's this paper format. It's got an open-ended question. It doesn't provide consistency in answers. And when you do have to deal with a legal situation, it can actually be difficult to enforce some of the observations made during the inspection. So we've kind of cleaned that up. And one of the latest things that it's helped us with is we're starting to ask questions about whether the business would be open to a polystyrene ban, if they would be open to straws upon request, etc. And now when I'm going to City Council to move forward these policies, I now have a survey that says 55% of our businesses said they would be supportive of this or not. So it's really helped to create a system that serves all of our environmental initiatives. So there we go. Questions? I think I got it about 15 minutes and 30 seconds. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to ask you about how you deal with organics. Like, who do you give them to, and how do you actually filter them out?
Okay, so that's a good question. Southern California, we're lacking in infrastructure for organics. So currently what we are doing with organics is we are promoting food recovery, so food donation opportunities. We're also promoting source reduction, so how they're procuring, how they're processing food. And right now our city is currently in the development of biosolids master plan, where we're looking to co-digest food with our biosolids for energy and then also fertilizer amendment. So that's one of the interesting benefits because the solid waste and recycling program, and actually its funding is in the water department, and our water department actually oversees our own utility agency and our own water source. It's creating a very simple pathway for us to develop systems that a lot of agencies cannot, because water is usually a separate agency than the city itself.
Did you get pushback from your different kinds of inspectors when you tried to integrate them, and what was the training burden?
So definitely got pushback. Like I said, it did take several years. And then finally, when we did do the training, we literally were able to train everyone. And again, some of our inspectors had been there for 25, 30 years, and they're stuck in their ways. We did the training program in a half day, and then we work with them in the first month if they have issues, especially with the technology. And then it's been going really well because now they went from an hour and a half to 30 minutes. They're having less difficulty in the enforcement actions because we have a lot of electronic documentation now. They're not so dependent on massive filing cabinets or the potential of losing something in the system. And those open-ended questions just created a ton of liability for our inspectors. So the inspector would say they saw something, they think they would document it appropriately, but this is California. All you need is an attorney to argue that. So it created a lot of protection for our inspectors, the new system.
It's a quick one. So real quick, this is awesome. This is inspiring. We do the industrial and construction permits here at State Board, and so we're always looking at doing something like this. One thing that has come up is in the field, do your tablets run off Wi-Fi, or do you go back and do they just run when you get back to the office?
So for these inspectors, we did set them up with cellular with their tablets. So, there are some tablet systems that just have Wi-Fi, but that was just too difficult and inefficient. So, thank you.
Okay, and we'll have, Claire's going to come up. Just two housekeeping items. There's a survey that was placed on your chair, and we'd like you to fill those out at the end of the day, and we'll either have a box or have the students collect them. And then just to also let you know, I had Colleen come because she made a similar presentation at the statewide recycling conference, and it was, again, the first time that this had been talked about, this unified inspection of this type. So all the silos are starting to look at it. Okay.
Right. So my presentation is, I think, got listed under a different title, but so it might be a little confusing, but yeah, I think I do. Yeah. So it's actually smartphones and sewers, and so there's actually going to be some great overlap with what Colleen just talked about. And a lot of my work is more focused on engagement and education, and I think that where we're headed is this idea of a kind of progressive, unified environmental outreach and engagement. Because I really believe that engaging communities in this kind of conversation not only educates them and makes them stewards, but it actually improves the resilience of many of these programs. So I'm a landscape architect, actually by training, and how I kind of fell into this world of watershed and stormwater management is I've been practicing for over 10 years now in places like New York, Manhattan and Brooklyn, Salt Lake City, Beijing, Honolulu, and I did a lot of streetscape design, public space design. So thinking about that space between sort of the front of a building, the sidewalk, the curb and gutter, and the street. And through that process, really became obsessed with sewers, because what I've learned is that a street is also a stormwater system, is urban watersheds, really. They're sort of designed synonymously. And that's true since sort of the beginning of sewers. And this is sort of to feed that ego, Colleen, as you mentioned, with regard to the stormwater folks feeling they're the most important. This is a quote from Cicero, one of the great Roman emperors who actually had a lot of these sewers implemented. And that quote is, "He who rules the sewer rules the city." And as a former environmental designer working in streetscape planning and design, that feels true a lot. So I'm really fascinated in this kind of overlap between streetscapes, which is actually public space too, right? And right-of-way, and sewer design, sanitary and storm. And of course, that can look differently depending on the city and the context. But one thing that isn't very different is that in most cities, this is a system that was put in place in the kind of early 20th century and really hasn't changed since, right? It looks a lot like this in most cities. And we're really kind of due for an upgrade. So I sort of got interested in thinking about new ways to envision this when we were sort of faced with another piece of ubiquitous public infrastructure, which is payphones. So back in 2013, New York City hosted a competition to sort of reimagine payphone infrastructure and what it could be in light of this sort of new digital smartphone era. And so we entered this competition rethinking what that payphone might look like as a piece of sort of smart technology, something that closed the digital divide, enabled better connectivity in terms of Wi-Fi service throughout New York City, sort of an interface that was more akin to what we're sort of seeing in sort of smartphone and digital technology. But moreover, we were thinking about this thing as a piece of stormwater infrastructure. So, this idea that as you cut into a curb, you're sort of integrating at the streetscape level with curb and gutter, with stormwater management, in some cases even sanitary if it's a combined sewer like it is in New York City, and thinking about ways that these payphones might actually monitor water quality, might actually get data back to municipalities about clogged drains and what pollutants might be present in that, as well as maybe even taking a little bit off of peak flows by pulling water into sort of catchment systems and maybe even limiting sort of outfall conditions in which untreated combined sewer and storm are being released into the water bodies. We also thought of this as a kind of ability to think about stormwater in a more sentient way, in this, what we call the sentient city, in that there's 14,000 payphones distributed throughout all 5 boroughs in New York. And so to really think about how if these became these sort of sensing stations, they became ways to tell us real-time geospecific data about not just where people are and how they're using this technology, but also stormwater and how it's moving, where floods are, and being able to communicate that data to the public, where floods are, where to sort of avoid certain locations in times of distress. So we actually, we won this competition. The payphones look very different than what we originally designed in 2013, but if you've been in New York City, you might have seen some of these installed. They're missing some of the stormwater sort of sentient condition, but regardless, it was fun to be noticed or to be recognized by the competition, and we won the Best of Functionality Award, I believe, as well. So a lot of the reason why we designed the payphone and we theorized about it in this way was actually in response to Hurricane Sandy, which happened in New York City, New Jersey, just a year prior. So here we are, the urban watershed right there. One of the things that we found really actually positive that came out of this event was something called Occupy Sandy. Has anybody heard of this movement? How many people have heard of Occupy Wall Street, right? Okay, so Occupy Wall Street was actually sort of happening concurrent. And so in the sort of minutes before Hurricane Sandy made landfall, those folks that were working with Occupy Wall Street decided to sort of reshift their focus from protesting to trying to facilitate relief efforts. They had over 60,000 volunteers. That's more than 4 times the American Red Cross at that time. And they were able to respond to needs in terms of distributing medication, fresh water, communicating egress and evacuation, and all through using free existing social media platform, which is Twitter. They used the hashtag Occupy Sandy to sort of get messages across. And by doing so, it's been considered one of the most successful grassroots relief efforts ever to be employed in the United States and was studied in 2014 by the Homeland Security Act. So really powerful stuff about thinking about grassroots resilience. This is for relief. So we wanted to theorize, how could we do this to think about not just the disaster effect, right, when the flooding already happened and the power is out and we have failures in our sort of urban stormwater management systems, but actually ways in which we might prevent those failures to improve the function of those cities through sort of grassroots community outreach in this kind of dispersed network. So that's really what we're working with. And we got a chance to test that theory as consultants to the city of San Jose. So this is a project working with the city of San Jose, predominantly their environmental service department and their Department of Transportation, and a grant from the Office of Cultural Affairs. It was a really unique opportunity where they said, okay, we've got a problem with specifically fog waste. And I think this is a crowd that knows what fog waste means, right? Fats, oils, and grease in this sanitary sewer line. It's a separated system. The creeks are the watershed management for urban stormwater. But the problem is that when there is fog in that drain, it can often cause, overflows, which mean that the storm and sanitary sort of mix together. So this is a map. All those little green dots are sanitary sewer overflows from 2009 to 2011 from residential sources. And through a series of mappings that we did there, we found that it's about 40% of the overflows were from residential. It's the largest perpetrator, and from only 11% of the lines. So they were clear hotspots. Here's just, sometimes I give this presentation to other folks who don't know what that looks like, but here we go, sanitary sewer overflow. So we worked with DOT, we worked with ESD, and we worked with community members in these hotspots. We toured the wastewater treatment plants, we went on ride-alongs with DOT, we rode with inspectors, we got the full suite of what it means to sort of serve this infrastructure as well as be served by it. And we did that by integrating with existing parenting groups at the local elementary schools within these hotspots, within these zones where we were having kind of a lot of high fog, residential fog-related overflows. But we didn't come in talking about fog, because nobody really wants to talk about that. We tried to take this approach, more progressive, sort of unified environmental concerns. We had these in Spanish as well as Vietnamese, just based off of the kind of community groups that were in this area. And what we ended up talking about actually a lot was food. Food is, I always call, the gateway drug to sustainability. So we sort of pegged these workshops as a recipe share. And we would come and we would start to talk about these recipes, and we would talk about the impacts of these recipes to personal health, as well as environmental health. And we would talk about how we would manage all those ranges of waste that came from the recipes. So we developed recipe cards that then became waste recipe cards. And we talked about different management strategies. And again, it's not just compost. We're talking about recycling. We're talking about stormwater management. And really what we found was community members were very excited about being stewards. They just didn't know how, and they didn't know the connection between cultural practice, kitchen habits, cooking, cleaning, shopping, and urban watersheds. So we developed a set of graphics that tried to illustrate those connections, and we co-designed that with the community. Again, it was printed in the tri-languages of Vietnamese, Spanish, and English, and it showed that connection between the home and the San Francisco Bay. Now, a lot of that infrastructure is invisible. We showed it in the graphics, but there's artifacts of it in a neighborhood. There's storm drains, or there's manholes, there's the actual VATCOM trucks that do the cleaning. And so we started to highlight those moments within the built environment that also spoke to this invisible infrastructure. So it starts to be kind of this sort of in-place neighborhood exhibit of these pieces that are really critical to their infrastructure. The best part is we work with DOT crews to implement them, and they were designed in such a way to help their inspection and cleaning process, not hinder. So the DOT guys said that by painting the manholes green, it saved them like 2 seconds per cleaning or per inspection. And that might sound like a lot, but over the course of a day and how many manholes that they inspect, or the course of a week or a year, it was quite impressive. And it's helped their job. It's also helped them communicate with the community better as they're in these neighborhoods servicing the lines. So to get back to this idea of smartphones, what we also find is that a lot of community members wanted to share ideas about how to minimize fog waste, how to improve urban watersheds, and that we started using the hashtag fog waste as a way to communicate this. And so this is a little outdated, but this is a screenshot of Instagram and Twitter on fog waste, and you can see there's elements of our installation that start to show up, but also like an image of the bacon fat and being poured out. That's a jar of grease saying, remove it from that water, don't let it go down the drain. But this way of really having it become a community-driven conversation, grassroots, modeling again after this idea that if you get folks in the community to share these ideas, it can become very effective. So, and this is a proposal that we have for a future installation, City of San Jose, where we actually trace the lines of that sanitary water system on City Hall. It's a wonderful concrete brutalist building. It's perfect for this kind of installation. But we've had a lot of success. We were a 2014 finalist for South by Southwest, Place by Design, and in 2016, this project, along with other City of San Jose projects, were awarded the Tengwu Pollution Prevention Award from the San Francisco Water Quality Board because it was demonstrating a real impact. And again, we didn't design bigger main lines or purchase more trucks. We did this just by outreach. We're working now on a similar project to illustrate the Alameda watershed. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I'm running out of time, but trying to, again, use engagement and outreach. There's a project that we're doing to think about moving sediment through that watershed to improve resilience to sea level rise. I won't go into the details there, but really what we're looking at from my perspective is how to engage people in a better understanding of this watershed and this place. So we had this wonderful event last Saturday. Over 100 community members showed up. We asked them about their knowledge, their understanding of this place, of this watershed, with a little map and survey exercise. Here's an image. But we also got to share our knowledge through local experts, through a walking tour of the creek. And we had activities for students creating their own watershed maps, trying to indicate the blue. We would crumple up a piece of paper. Low parts became where water was. We tried to get them to find moments that would be red development that would impact it the least. Then we would spray with water and show them that there's no such thing as, not impacting a watershed. So really powerful. And they became these kind of beautiful paintings that the children love taking home. We had some chalk work for the younger kids. What do we need? What is the Alameda Creek, so that we can understand better how they use this space? And again, social media became a really important tool. We had a lot of high school students present, and they shared their own ideas and thoughts about this watershed through the use of the hashtag public sediment. I have cards about that project if you guys want to know more. But the bottom line is that we really feel I really feel, and my colleagues as well that I work with, that engagement is a really powerful tool. It can really help improve the quality and the function of urban watersheds, not only just in education, but in actually achieving some of these goals. Great. Thank you.
We have time for a question or two. Anyone? Okay. Thank you very much, Claire.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beth Payne. I work here at the State Water Board in the Division of Water Quality, and I work in the Stormwater Planning Unit. Our unit, we implement the state stormwater strategy, which we also call STORMS, which is kind of a handy acronym. And one of the projects that I lead is tracking implementation of the Stormwater Resource Plan guidelines, which I'm going to go over today. A quick background of or a quick overview of what I'm going to be going over today, a background of what stormwater resource plans are, why they're required, what the difference is between a functionally equivalent plan and a regular standalone from scratch stormwater resource plan. And then I'll go over the relationship between the Proposition 1 planning grants that the State Water Board gave out in 2016. And then the meat of the presentation was actually going to be on project identification and prioritization. I'll spend a little bit of time on adaptive management and then have a very quick funding update. So just quickly, before today, who did know what a stormwater resource plan was? Just a few. Okay, good. So in 2014, the state legislature passed the Senate Bill 985, and that Senate bill, it required for any public agency that wanted public funds like Proposition 1 money for a stormwater capture and use project or an infiltration project, they needed to have that project in a stormwater resource plan. And because there were no stormwater resource plans in existence at the time, they also required the State Water Board to come up with guidelines for those plans. And so in 2015, December, we issued those guidelines and the board approved them. I was the lead writer on those guidelines. And then right after, in 2016, Division of Financial Assistance at the State Water Board started to solicit for grants for those projects. And so there was $200 million that went out that was allocated to the Division of Financial Assistance, and it was going to be allocated in 2 rounds. The first round was in 2016, and it also included about $10 million for planning grants because they knew that some people were going to need time and money to actually develop those plans. And then here I have the benefit table there. That's in the Stormwater Resource Plan guidelines. The goal of the Stormwater Resource Plan was to be a watershed-based plan that integrated stormwater capture and use along with other sort of water management things like flood control, water supply, things like that. The 5 benefits that were identified in the water code are listed here. It's water quality, water supply, flood management, environmental, or community benefits. The other emphasis for the Stormwater Resource Plan guidelines and the water code were multi-benefit projects. So they want your Stormwater Resource Plan to be integrated on a watershed base and include multi-benefit projects. So of the planning grants that the State Water Board awarded, this was in June 2016. There were 28 grants total and about $10 million. These colored areas on the map are either the intended planning areas for those plans, or in the case of Southern California, they had watershed management programs that sort of met the requirements of the water code already, and so they had some tweaking, and we concurred that they met the water code requirements, and they were eligible for the round 1 project funds. So this is an example of what a functionally equivalent plan might look like. This is an Orange County example. Here they have their stormwater resource plan, and it actually draws from all the other plans in the area that cover it geographically, and those plans meet the requirements of the water code. And these plans were primarily just for funding purposes for round 1 and maybe for round 2. And then once the State Water Board, they reviewed that functionally equivalent collection of documents and their explanation of how it meets the water code, they would send them a letter, concurring with it or not. So we'll get into project identification now. First, I'm just going to talk about identifying projects, which is a requirement of the water code, and it's how you're going to get money for those projects, is having them identified and put in a stormwater resource plan. That's typically, it's a GIS exercise or an analysis to identify opportunities in the planning region for those projects, and then they would collect planned or future projects. So here's an example this is Galeto Water District. This is a GIS screening analysis for infiltration-based BMPs. They have their screening criteria here on the left. Over here, the top map, you can see that this is their planning area. We were flexible on whether or not these planning areas were based on an actual watershed or not, because that's not always feasible for some agencies. So here they have about 21,000 parcels total in their planning area. After they apply all of these criteria, they end up with 14 parcels that would be good for an infiltration-based BMP. And so just for that one analysis, they were able to take their entire planning area and bring it down to 14 parcels where they would go and do further analysis for a project. This one's interesting. This one's from San Mateo. They did a similar GIS screening, but they did it based on road segment. So here they would have their same criteria, just like in the previous slide, but then each road segment was assigned a point based on how well they met that criteria. For some of these, they also applied a weighting factor. So for each street segment, it would get a score. The higher scores are here in red, and those were their higher opportunity sites for green streets and public right-of-ways. And so this was more of a prioritization of a project type rather than a specific project. This is another example of GIS screening by project type. This is Eureka. They have their screening criterion, which they used in their GIS analysis. They only had these types of projects that they looked at in their plan, because not all types of projects are going to apply to everyone based on their region. So for example, here with their trash capture devices, they had to be located in trash priority areas. So that's just an example of one way to do it. And then for some of those projects that were listed, they have a minimum type of area that they were required, that they also use in their GIS analysis. Okay, once the GIS analysis is complete and they have identified opportunities for those different BMP type projects, they're going to then go to their participating agencies in the region and gather up all the extra projects that might qualify for stormwater capture and use and infiltration, or would meet the priorities of the region. And so this is usually an open solicitation. This is an example from Contra Costa County, and they did, not only did they include existing projects, but they also included future plan projects or anyone that really wanted to submit a project. And they ended up getting 550 projects submitted to their plan. They are actually going to analyze each project to make sure that it's eligible to be in their plan. It's actually a stormwater-related project. But this is an example from Orange County of the functional equivalent that I showed earlier. They, you can see they just based theirs on open solicitation of projects. They're not really GIS, they're not doing GIS analysis in a functional equivalent. They're just looking for funding for a few different projects. Orange County went a step further and actually did more of an open solicitation to create a little more comprehensive type plan. They're also less discerning in their projects. They accepted all of their projects and scored them. The next step is project prioritization and scoring. In a lot of cases I've seen they combine those steps actually. So you can use your score to prioritize your projects in the region. The score is required to be metric-based and quantitative. And when I was looking at the stormwater resource plans that are being developed right now, they really range in from very simple to very complex scoring techniques, which can vary based on your region if you have a big region or a small one. And then for prioritization, they can be very region-specific. There are some that have a very large region, so they relied on the smaller jurisdictions within their planning area to prioritize their projects. And then they had those top projects submitted to their project list. And they can also do this by using the weighted scores to further prioritize their projects. And then just a note there for funding implications. In talking with Division of Financial Staff, financial assistance staff, they've noticed that some project proponents are worried that if their project doesn't rank high enough, it's not eligible for funding. But that's not true. It's just a prioritization is a requirement of the water code for the plan overall. So when they go for funding for an individual project, they're not necessarily looking at the score or the priority of the project. So this is an example from Tahoe RCD. Before you score a project, you need to establish the metrics that you're going to use to score it. So of the 5 water type benefits, they used water quality, environment, community, and flood management. Water supply was not an issue in their region, so they didn't use that as a scoring. Their metrics were different based on their region too. They split their region into Tahoe at the top and non-Tahoe at the bottom. And then once you have your metrics established, you're going to score your project. This is an example from San Diego. For each type of benefit, they had a different flow chart. So this is water quality, for example. And their project proponent would actually score their own project. They move through each one of these metrics within water quality to find a point score. Those are added up, and then they move to the next flow chart. So they had 5 flow charts plus a worksheet to score their projects. This is an example from, this is Goleta Water District at the top. Water quality was very important to their region, so projects that had BMPs that benefited a TMDL listed water body would score higher because they had a high weight. And then the bottom one is Eureka. They use their GIS analysis to also weight projects, and so based on the proximity to other, to stormwater priority areas or public spaces, they would score higher. And then here's another example of a scoring matrix. This is also from Eureka. They had a lot of different benefit metrics that they used. This is just for water quality. They also have that trash capture, which was really important for them. So not only is it scored here, but it's also got one of the top weights. And then this is another scoring matrix for Tahoe RCD. Within their metrics, you can see they have multiple metrics for water quality. They would actually average the score for each one and then total it. Once you have your projects scored, they would list them out so they can compare them to each other and show their priority. So this is also Eureka. They have their projects listed here on the left, and then their different water quality scores, their benefit scores, and then their multi-benefit index, which is used to prioritize the project even further. And then Tahoe RCD had those two different regions, Tahoe versus non-Tahoe areas. And then even within those regions, they further separated out for prioritization. So you can see here they've got City of South Lake Tahoe and El Dorado County. And then they have their score and the rank. For Tahoe, their score directly correlated with their rank, so they could have multiple rank 1 projects. Russian River it's still in draft form, but this is their project list. There's actually project names over here to the left. Instead of using just the benefit scores to prioritize their projects, they also had these additional criteria that they awarded bonus points for. So you can see if the project was funded, it got a lot of bonus points. If it benefited a disadvantaged community or public land, or it had some sort of unquantified benefits, then they gave it some extra points. So now I'm going to move on to adaptive management. It's a very short part of my presentation because so the plan's being developed right now at the State Water Board. They're still executing their contract, and the adaptive management planning process for them is at the very end of their contract. So there are not a lot of examples for adaptive management. But for this, adaptive management should be a living document. It needs a way to track projects as they're being implemented so you can estimate the performance. You need a way to be able to revise the stormwater resource plan because it's still in the water code as a requirement for any future bond funds for those stormwater capture projects. You also need to add new projects, as time goes on, you need those. And really importantly, it needs to identify the responsible parties for who's going to be updating that plan and who's going to be tracking the projects or making adjustments to the plan. So in the stormwater resource plan guidelines, this is the only guidance for adaptive management. It's very short, it's very vague, because we realize that technically adaptive management is not required by Senate Bill 985. There is a requirement for the document to be, a living document and to be able to be revised as time goes on, but it did not provide much guidance. So we try to expand on that a little bit, but we know that it's going to be different for every region depending on their resources. But in general, the adaptive management plan should have a timeline, and it should have some sort of schedule for plan updates with a frequency. I've seen every 5 years or every 2 years. Again, it should identify the responsible parties or agencies. The ones that seem that they might be more successful have coordinated their plan updates and their adaptive management with other stormwater planning efforts in the area. So one of the requirements is that the plan be submitted to the local IRWIM group. The IRWIM group doesn't really have to do anything with it once they get it, but there are some really active IRWIM groups in the area that are actively working with the stormwater resource planning groups, and they sometimes take on some of those adaptive management responsibilities. That's also true for some TMDL implementation plans, green infrastructure plans, and the watershed management plans down in Southern California. This is one of the few examples I have for you for adaptive management plan from Tahoe RCD. They have a 4-step process for their adaptive management. Every 2 years, they rely on their project proponents here to insert any sort of tracking data into, they submit it to Tahoe RCD for their projects that they've implemented. And then Tahoe RCD is going to be the responsible party for tracking those benefits, incorporating new research, new information, whatever. Then they'll make a recommendation for any adjustments for the plan. That can include anything from revising the benefit scoring or the priorities or even the types of projects that they want to look at. And then once they have that list of recommendations, they actually take it to their TAC, which is their Technical Advisory Committee, at a public meeting, so they get public feedback, which is great. And then once they get buy-off, they adopt the changes and they make the adjustments. So adaptive management at the functional equivalent doesn't really happen. It's because of the functional equivalent stormwater resource plan relies on all the other documents to fulfill the water code requirements. They're also going to rely on those documents for their adaptive management, which most of these plans have. The water quality improvement plans or their IRWIM plans, they have some sort of adaptive management in their plans already. And then finally, the money update. So you can see in round one, we had about $10 million of planning grants that went out. And then we're not doing any planning grants for round two. We're anticipating all those people that are developing their plans will be ready to apply for project money. And that will be about $90 million. And it will be late 2018 or early 2019 from what I've heard. If you have more questions about that, we have a Division of Financial Assistance staff contact. That is Damon Badyal, and his email is up there. And that's it. Any questions?
I have a question for you, Beth. Do you have an idea of how the size of the AR or of the Stormwater Resource Plan watershed boundaries compare to the IRWIMPs that they're within and becoming a part of? Does it vary for everywhere? Or?
So for those groups that are more actively participating with the IRWIM, it's the same boundary. And so when we did the outreach for the Stormwater Resource Plan guidelines at the beginning, we really encouraged people to go that route. There's not always municipalities that want to cooperate with some others. And so you will find some very small resource plans out there. But yes, for the most part, we ask them to do that. But.
Thank you very much.
So thanks for everyone. My name is Jing Wu. I am with San Francisco Esri Institute. That is a nonprofit science organization in San Francisco Bay Area. So today I'm going to talk about we called a Green Plan 8. That is a planning tool we have been developing past few years to support water